Good afternoon to all of you. A warm welcome to everyone joining us today. It's a pretty miserable day here in London, I have to admit, but I know we'll have students joining us who are on campus, but might also be studying remotely. So wherever you are, thank you for spending the next hour with us, whether it's morning, afternoon, or in the case of our guest speaker today, evening. So thank you very much, David. My name's Andrew Wright. I'm head of employer engagement here at King's, and I lead a number of teams who ensure that we're connected to employers and alumni across the world so that we can share that intelligence on the graduate recruitment market to you, our students, but also to build relationships that bring employers and opportunities through events, activities, placements, and internships. It's my pleasure to convene today's event, which is part of the King's Business School Connections series. The series aims to connect students and alumni with practitioners, industry experts, and some of our alumni professionals to explore different sectors and professions and hopefully help you navigate your future career. So I hope many of you have been listening to some of the other sessions and also participating in some of the wider careers activities that we've been putting on over the last few weeks or so. I'm delighted that today we're joined by Dr. David Lin, who's our guest speaker. He's joining us today from Taiwan. David is a King's alum. He completed his PhD in management after previously completing a master's in economics at the London School of Economics. Presently, he's chairman of Whitesun Equity Partners, which is a private equity fund supporting thriving, high potential consumer businesses and entrepreneurs across Greater China. But he began his career with the China Development Industrial Bank, where he was in charge of US-based technology investment activities, and then founded Whitesun in 2006. So David has extensive work practice across the investment and finance sector in consumer service, media, technology, and also other high-value manufacturing businesses across the Pacific Rim. He's also the founding vice president of Hong Kong Independent Non-Executive Directors Associations. That's a bit of a mouthful, David. That sounds like a fascinating job, where he's been advocating for better corporate governance and providing linkage to knowledge sharing across Asia. And really brilliantly for us, he's also a visiting research fellow with the King's Business School. So David, it sounds like a very fascinating and jam-packed career. Today, he's going to be sharing some of that journey and insights in working in the finance and investment sector across Asia. We'll explore some of the opportunities and the challenges of working currently in that sector and hear David's thoughts on some of the current labour market trends that will be hopefully of use to you as our students today. So most importantly, we want to hear from you. David and I will be conversing for about half an hour or so. But there's going to be a Q&A session after that chat. So please do submit your questions using the Q&A function that hopefully you can see at the bottom of your screen. I know we've got many students signed up for today, so hopefully we'll get to as many questions as possible. But do upvote other people's questions that perhaps you think that's relevant to me, or I really want to hear the answer to that. What we'll do is use the most liked that will move towards the top of the Q&A, and we'll try and select as many of those as we can get to and have time to. So please do join me in giving a very warm welcome to David Lin for this virtual fireside chat. I'm sorry we can't do this in person, but of course this virtual world means that we can do things in slightly different ways. David, it's a real pleasure. Thank you very much for returning to King's Business School and to King's College London as well. We talked about, in that introduction, your sort of illustrious career across the finance sector, David, but where did this all start? You studied a PhD, which some of our students may have thought that's a very academic route for you to go into. What happened next? Did you know what you wanted to do at university, and how does that journey commence from your PhD at King's?
Right. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Gina. Hi, everyone. Although I can't see, who's on the line, but a little bit introduction of myself. I'm David Lin. Like Andrew mentioned earlier, I spent a good amount of time studying in UK. I started off my university journey with University of Kent, long time ago, back in the 90s. Then I went to LSE. I got my master of economics, but I focused on operational research. And I spent a few years, maybe 2 to 3 years, working in Asia, predominantly in Taiwan. But back then I was already working more like a consulting advisory type of job with an airline company. So I was really working as an in-house consultant, if you like, to implement a computer-aided system for an airline company. It was a new airline company back then, but I think many of you, were familiar with the name. I was one of the early employees to join EVA Air, who has many services between UK and Thailand and to Taiwan. Now I was back in King's to study my PhD in '96, I believe, and I've been here for 4 years. I graduated in 2000. So kind of a long intro to answer your question. I didn't know I would be joining investment or particularly finance business. It was an opportunity back in the time when the bank I was working for started a UK presence. So they wanted to expand out of Taiwan, because Taiwan, as everyone knows, is quite strong in computer key components. And at that time, really the beginning of semiconductor foundry services and other related ecosystems surround semiconductor industry. So UK back in the days has some really strong, innovative, companies. Some of them surrounded in Cambridge, Oxford area, and some of them on the west of UK. I was fortunate enough to get selected to help them to set up that business, and I was invited to stay in UK. But when I graduated, instead of joining the bank's presence in UK, I decided to return to my hometown, which is Taiwan, to join that bank at headquarter level, because I really want to know, what is, the corporation, how the corporation functions, before I already take on a more sort of frontline job. So I returned to Taiwan in 2000, and I really started the career. Back then, I didn't know what department I'll get assigned, which is the important part of the discussion later. Many things you can't really plan in advance. It's what the journey takes you. Then you have to make the best out of it. So I was a credit person. I got put into a credit department. So I have to look at all kinds of different companies, regardless whether they are investment cases, restructuring cases, turnaround cases, or a simple corporate lending cases. We have to write credit reports, which is a very demanding job, but it's fantastic for someone who is new to the business. The key difference is we only have to look at the risk factors. We don't really need to look for the upside, because we're not marketing. We're not in the front line to execute the business itself. We're here to make sure we cover all the risk factors. So the guy who's actually making the decisions can factor in our inputs, to protect the potential risks. So that's how I actually started my career. I didn't know the biggest difference between investing in back then, venture capital or private equity. I didn't have a very very clear idea. But really, the big difference is direct investments versus secondary investment. So we have to work with the company, identify the opportunities, and negotiate a term directly with the company. Then we inject in most cases capital directly into the company to facilitate their growth or for whatever purposes. So I started, like I say, as a credit department analyst, and later on become an associate. Then the next job I was assigned to, it was very timely. It was 2001, I remember. There's 9/11, and there's a technology bubble. So the bunch of portfolio that was that back then belongs to the bank were all, we call it underwater. Basically, we invest in overvalued time. And a lot of these companies are facing capital crunch. So they all have to be refinanced. But I didn't do any of those transactions. But I was brave enough to help the bank to go manage those potentially bad portfolio. And a lot of them are in the United States. So my second job was I got put on the plane. Then I had to fly to Silicon Valley, 13 hours flight. I get there, I had to drive like 100 to 200 miles a day to go up and down the Silicon Valley to visit those companies, to figure out what happened. But that really opened up my eye, because I didn't have the responsibility to look for new opportunity, but I had an opportunity to work with many, many companies, although a lot of them are in pretty bad shape. But that really opened up my eye. So I started off finding the common denominator of how this company, why they become in such a situation that require people to help rescue them. And at the same time, I also identified there's so many other companies doing similar things.
Yeah.
Why aren't they in a similar position? So from there, I sort of helped identify a path for me to start really investing career. So that's like the third job at the bank. So every year there's something different. So I was quite fortunate in the year number 3, I started looking at exploring things that I really like to do. So at the beginning, I was out in the dark, right? I just had to explore.
And I think you reflect what so many of our students joining us today will
Right.
probably think as well. We know the finance sector is a very enticing sector still,
Yeah.
but you explore the reality of it through work you do, through those sort of internships, and actually just not really knowing what you're going to do when you start as a graduate, and finding different routes and pathways through it.
Yeah.
What surprised you about the industry back then, other than, of course, having to deal with those challenges in that sort of bubble, and particularly the US side of the market with, very, overly leveraged or whatever. And I guess the follow on from that, sort of, where are the new opportunities in finance for students today? We talk so much about investment banking and private equity and hedge funds and these sort of terms that many of our students will know about, some will not. But where is the finance market today? What are those new opportunities that students should be looking out for?
Right. I mean, there are a lot of big mega trends. Many people in my field constantly talk about. There's some of the key vocabularies, right? There are the green energy categories. There is also a big area on AI and Metaverse. These type of new novel terms that there's so much talk about. And obviously, crypto, blockchain technology, and how blockchain technology could enable many, peer-to-peer, services or consumer transaction facilitating tools. It can be treated also as that. So just a lot. Many people are talking about this, and lots of capital has been dedicated to go into these areas. But the way I see it is, a lot of the terms, they are new applications. And new applications, you still need to have business models, solutions, and infrastructure to drive those new applications, right? So for example, fundamentally, the 5Gs, the semiconductors, these are still, areas that capital still going in, new innovations still coming up every day, because there's more demand for better computation, more efficient and safer transport of data, right? And you need simply more electronic key components to support all the linking devices, etc. So if you really look at the new terms that could be considered as new industry, they are, right? But but those key enabling technologies are still they're still there, like 20 years ago and 20 years now. So it's very interesting how people look at opportunities, right? So there's fundamental infrastructures and there are application areas which are new. So those are all, where a lot of the capital goes into.
It's funny, isn't it? We sort of go through cycles inevitably, and we always forget that we've gone through that cycle before. But I think that sort of bringing together of finance and investment and technology that you talked about is so critical. And I know students here that studying at the business school, but also in some of our other departments and faculties, will be very conscious of that interweaving of those sort of disciplines, but also how graduate recruitment is sort of looking towards, particularly in the financial services sector today. It's that skill set, it's that understanding or that passion for some of the things like crypto, which I have to admit is still an area that escapes me a lot of the time. And yet I recognize it's hugely important. But students today will have many, many jobs in their career. You've sort of shared some of your progression in the early stage, at least. But alongside that strong academics, all of that hopeful that will, bring out loads of students with fantastic degrees in their time at King's. What is it that students need to have to be successful today? What are the skills and attributes that you perhaps look for as a senior executive, or you're looking out for in talent pools today?
Right. I think it's kind of a grander topic to discuss fully, but I think if I relate to my experience back in the days when I was at King's, I think the research methods really helped me, in long term, because if you're in finance business, I don't think you get to choose exactly what industry you want to involve. You involve in whatever industry that has business, right? I don't think you get to choose. I just want to do semiconductor, or I just want to do something else. It doesn't work like that. Finance business is you're really in the service industry. You're supporting entrepreneurs. You're supporting company with good ideas and good energy to create something, to create business, right? In that regard, a fast response to comprehend the specific business models or a specific domain knowledge that in turn becomes a product or become a service is important. And also you need also to understand people, how, it's a similar technology on the hands of different entrepreneurs. You will turn to very different companies. So those research method of understanding how people do whatever they do every day is important. So you understand who you're dealing with. And also at the same time, you understand what your competitors are doing. And you need to figure out whatever they're doing too. So you know how to, strategize yourself to be able to survive in a very fierce competition.
Absolutely. It's hugely important, isn't it? That sort of commercial awareness, I think.
Exactly.
Recruiters might term it as, but that understanding in detail, in real detail, of what a sector is going through, of what your competitors in that market are going through. I think that's really good advice for students looking at their own careers today. It's also interesting to hear someone, we talk about, particularly in the UK context, the financial services being part of this huge service economy that we have. But it's interesting to reflect as well that, of course, a service-led industry is all about people at the end of the day. When you were talking about Silicon Valley and going and meeting people and exploring different things, and amongst all the skill sets that students may need to have, it's actually those sort of interpersonal skills that are really critical, and also probably more critical, I guess, the more senior you get, when you become a business developer, if that's the right word, in building networks. So how important have those networks been throughout your career, David? If you think back to your time again studying, at Kent and LSE and at King's at the end, did you still, or did you use those networks of sort of your academics and your fellow students? Have they supported your own career? Do you still keep in touch with sort of mentors and people today?
I do. I think, like you mentioned, Andrew, I think interpersonal skill, a lot of skills which are which need to be developed through experience. But whatever you learn from the universities or from business school are very helpful, but things you may not realize how relevant they are until you start using them. And, you know, if you have less working experience before you go to business school, you may not appreciate as much. But there's also a theory, which is kind of the path I took, is I didn't work many years, but I started, you know, kind of the business school type of route. But I begin to realize after I start working. So, you know, it's very important that I think whatever you learn from business school, there are collection of knowledge of people who been in the business or in whatever field they are for a long period of time. So as long as you keep those, whatever you learn in mind, one day they're going to become relevant, right? I think what's important is, you know, for myself, I think as I grow to become from a very junior guy to become more senior guy, then become business owners, and I try to become an opinion leader in the business, right? You have to migrate through phases. I think having your own track of thoughts, having your ability to identify what are the universe you're looking at, what exactly you want to do, because no two companies are the same. So finding your path, right? Finding your path and have the right tool to help you to execute it is most important. There's no right or wrong. If everyone had the same path, and at the end, you know, no independent, you know, kind of a business operator can survive. The market will be all taken by these big branded guys like, you know, Goldman's and Blackstone's. But we have a lot of co-investment together with, you know, for me especially with Goldman, because we can always find an angle that they couldn't find, and they're happy to work together. So you can also find ways to, by collaborating with others, by doing whatever they can't do. There could be many you know, aspects that they cannot service the particular area we're servicing. So coming back to, I still have a close connection with my former research group. You know, Professor He, Professor Poloff, John Hai Marsh, Derek Von Lam. I mean, we've been together for like 20 some years. We're still very close. And, you know, to be honest, from time to time, I still join their data sessions, and those really freshen up my mind. One thing about finance world is, I mean, it in a sense is quite glamorous. You travel well. You're seeing all the executive. You know, it can be, but at the same time, it's also very tiring. You know, it's hard work, it's long hours, it's super high pressure, and easy to go wrong. you name it. I think often to go back to your root. That's what I think for myself. Thinking something more fundamental, something more logical thoughts, logical and analytical, experience by working with, the business school. It really helped me to a lot of time clear my head. So I still do. I still contact with a lot of people who I have strong connection with. Even 20, 30 years ago, when I first met them, we still, keep in close touch.
That's really great to hear. And I hope some of our students today will take that message away and think, who is that network that exists around them, their study peers, the people they're living with in our residences, on student societies and different groups, to recognize that actually it's those people in their future career that they may not think of now, but eventually they will become the people they return to. David, we're making it sound like it's a very straightforward, simple, illustrious, amazing career you've had, which of course is true, but it can't always have been plain sailing along the way. What do you look back on in your own personal career and think, I got that wrong, or there was a moment where I could have taken two routes and I took one route or whatever? Are there things that you look back on and think, what should I have done differently?
That's actually a very tough question. I think, this is my 20th year in the business. one thing I would share is it's not single incident or single case that I have this reflection. It really is, for most. I'll tell you an interesting story. When a group of us usually get together in the same finance business, right? Usually what people talk about is not what are the best deal you've ever made. You make 20 times or 30 times, but usually are the cases that you pass. You think it's nothing, but at the end they all become huge companies, right? Those are the cases. So what I'm trying to say is you can only make decision with the best of efforts, with the best of information at the time. But that doesn't guarantee you a win. So I think if I can be even more disciplined, so I did chase some really hot, sexy deals with high valuation, back in the days. But I try not to do them anymore. But at the same time, I missed out some opportunity. But I think if you want to survive or to thrive, I think to be able to thrive or not, I think there's some portion of luck as well. But if you cannot survive long enough in the industry, you can't buy the chance to thrive in the future. So you have to buy your time, right? To be able to buy your time, you have to not make stupid mistake. And discipline is very important, because eventually we are in service business. For me, as a fund manager, I manage people's money. I manage insurance companies' money. I manage endowments. I manage insurance company, banks' money. So whatever mistake we make, they have the depositors or they have their policyholder. Those are the guys who are going to suffer. So discipline not to do something, too risky or too on the gambling side. I think for me, that's speaking personally, is probably the best policy to make sure, hey, if I don't make stupid mistake, at least I have a chance to keep doing. And if I collect enough, good opportunities, and something's gonna happen. But I'm not going to make stupid mistake that wipe out everything I have at the beginning.
Yeah.
So that's me. But there are many other people who are much more aggressive than I am. So I'm just one of those guys who are less aggressive.
So I'm taking away be disciplined is what you've just said. Use the network, build the network.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
Take the right risks, not the stupid risks, right? But I guess both personally and professionally. So business risk in the environment you're doing, but also for your own career.
Correct.
Is finance still this sort of cut and thrust industry that we've all come to know through the media, on the television? What's the change you've seen in all the time you've been working in financial services, with all the big sort of stories of the bubbles of the 2000s, the internet bubbles, the tech bubbles, the finance bubble, and the crash of 2008, and of course more recently the challenges of the last few months? What's changed? What do you reflect back on and think that's different now?
I think for me, talking about what I see here in Asia. I think in early 2000, that's really when the direct investment, especially venture capital market, really started to peak. Private equity was vibrant, but now it's like super monster-sized industries. I think what's different is that I think in the older days, it's less complicated. It's more about addressing the opportunities with the right technology, with the right resources, human resource or capitals, or right management skill to make something work. But I think especially for the past year or so, the geopolitical situation really become a game changer. If you used to have I use Taiwan as an example. Again, I use semiconductor as an example. There used to be a model where innovations may be coming from UK or from US, and Taiwan is the manufacturing base, and you can sell it over over the world. And 10, 15 years ago, some of the manufacturing base migrate to Southeast Asia and China, right? And now, because of geopolitical situation, now a lot of the facilities that were maybe based out of China, and they start having problems shipping to whatever country they were servicing before, right? And on the reverse side, China domestically is getting very, very strong with tons of great innovation, technology, and demand, which is tremendous. It's it's amazing. But again, because of the geopolitical tension, a lot of the key components or key materials required for them to carry on their manufacturing or whatever products they're making are become restrictive. So if you're in that sector, you try to foster something to grow. It's not because your product's not good. It's not because the demand is not there, which was all the problem in the past, right? There are plenty of capital. Governments are printing money, and there are plenty of capital out there. The demands are there, the capitals are there, but they just can't get the product out. So it's very strange that if you're caught in those situations, right? You're looking at a very, very different risk, which is, I think, unprecedented, really. So everyone's scratching their head. So maybe a company should have multiple production sites versus older days to have an ecosystem all in maybe one geography and service the world, and that has to change as well. So
it sounds like there's lots of positives coming out.
It can be
in
positive.
terms of all these changes.
Yes, I think it definitely creates more opportunity for finance practitioner, right? Because there's more demand to relocate, to set up additional sites, etc. Definitely, I think maybe for one part of financing professional, yes, but maybe also at the same time, with all this extra capacity being built, are we really creating efficiencies or not? Right now, demands are there. Average unit price is high, so margin is high, so everyone's doing no problem. But overall supply and demand, obviously, your supply side is catching much faster than demand. And one day, again, you're going to have adjustment. So who's going to get caught in that circumstances will be the one who, I would say that, maybe you should have thought about it before you invest your capital, right? So again, everyone can do their math. Either it's going to be 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years. You're going to have oversupply again. So when do you get out? When do you stop?
Yeah,
and what do you do?
There's always a casualty.
There's also a casualty. And history repeats again and again and again.
So we've talked a little bit about supply chain, all the challenges. It's amazing. We've got through nearly 40 minutes or so, and I haven't yet, although I'm about to mention the word COVID, which of course has been such a part of our lives the last 20 months or so.
Right.
But many of our students will be fully aware of what's happening in the UK and maybe the European market in terms of how things are working. Can you tell us a little bit more about what is changing in the Asian market, or perhaps the greater China region? What are you seeing day to day in how that is impacting your business and indeed its interrelationship with everything else?
Right. I think the three geographies are covered within Asia Pacific, mainly China, Taiwan, to some extent Japan. I think it's frustrating because the quarantine policies is very, very strict. I think probably Taiwan and China, and to some extent Japan, probably one of the most strict rule in terms of quarantine. And so basically, if I used to take I used to go to Shanghai probably every week. It's just such an easy flight. It's like going to Germany, and you can do a day trip even if you want to. And now a trip costs you a month, right? It's 14 days, 14 plus 7 days there, and 14 plus 7 days back. Basically, you don't travel. For us, the frustrating part is we work directly with the company. We're not traders. We can simply do conference calls and invest. But if you're in that line of finance, and maybe you can get away with virtual connections, through technology. But for us, we are in the business to help grow the company or to help manage the company. Not being able to travel is a huge downside for us. It's a lot of risk that it could get out of control. So it's pretty painful. And also some industry that we involve with. For example, I have a portfolio company, which is one of the largest live performance business in that part of the world. And we have not had a concert of a tour larger than 20 shows in 2 years.
Wow.
Things like that, right? And so I think what people can do is, I think that's what most of the people in my situation do, is they have to develop business more within their geography. So not a lot of cross-border opportunities anymore because travel restriction. It doesn't allow you to travel freely like before. So I think everyone had to pivot a little bit. Hopefully that pivot is for the better, and hopefully when things get gradually back to normal, then you can pick up where you left off. So it's unfortunate, but it's more negatives.
Yeah, I think it's all something we're hoping comes back to some form of normality. I know many of our students have missed out on lots of opportunities to travel, study abroad, do internships and experience over the last year. And personally, we've all missed out on seeing family, holidays, reconnecting if you're an international student in particular. But then, of course, we're looking at sort of COP26, I guess, at the moment in the UK and sustainability and all those other things you talked about earlier as well, about sort of trends across the financial services sector, where your own clients are starting to look at doing things differently as well. What therefore is, I guess, my last question? I can see lots of questions now coming in from our students, which is fantastic. But why would a student like you, who studied in the UK and chose to go back to Taiwan, your home, and has had a very successful career, what's the enticement still now to the sort of Asia Pacific region for students who might want to go back? We see that it is increasing. We see increasing numbers of students who choose very proactively to go back. And I know from the conversations I have with employers over there, there's fantastic opportunity. But what's the sort of pitch you would make to say, come back? There's an amazing stuff going on in that region.
Right. Well, I think really it's very vibrant. I think I would say 20 years ago, the type of opportunities, the type of private sector opportunities, the type of emerging business opportunities are less. The universe is not it's a big universe. I mean, back in the days, there was still a lot of the GDPs coming from a lot of government actions from public sectors. But private sector really, I would say the biggest change, I'm sure many people will agree with me, in my part of the world, China is becoming, a lot of private sectors emerge and grow and become successful businesses. And a lot of, especially consumer sector as well. I mean, with urbanization, just tons of great mind and great opportunities being emerged and developed in the country with such a huge population. And at the same time, if you look at Southeast Asia, also maybe because of geopolitical shift, a lot of the businesses which were already taking place in China or to some extent in Taiwan, they migrate to Southeast Asia to start building Southeast Asian hub for various reasons. Could be for commercial reason, it could be for political reason. And those were not the case. Those are not something you have, and that's something you cannot see before. So if there are emerging demand for new businesses in scale, and there are opportunity for finance. I mean, one place you can go as if you want to finance business is if you go to a place with the decreasing population, no new industries, and or simply just a tourist destination, right? If you go to a country with new businesses, new private sector, more investment into create more opportunity, new type of opportunity, and those are destination, and those are the opportunities.
It's thriving. It's definitely. I mean, I haven't been fortunate, of course, through the pandemic to go back to China and Southeast Asia in particular, but every time I've been there for business, I know just how thriving it is, and particularly graduate recruitment, where those businesses, whether they are multinationals or state-run businesses or local, regional entities, are really, really thriving. David, thank you for all of your sort of insights over the last half an hour or so. We've got some questions coming in from some students, which I'm really keen that we get to. So thank you everyone who's been posting those. Please continue as well. We'll try and get to as many as possible. But if I can turn immediately to Jia Chen, thank you for your question. She says, do you think finance is a good starting base to get experience in order to start your own company, which might not necessarily be financially related, but I guess maybe thinking to the future of being an entrepreneur in her own right? Does finance give you a good starting base for that?
I think so. I think I look at finance more broadly. So I would say accounting is part of the finances as well. To start your own business, to be an entrepreneur like I am, there's so many different aspects you need to consider, right? There's look for right recruitment, which is more HR related, labor relations, right? And most importantly, how much ammunition you prepare. So your cash management, to do projections, to do financing. If you're growing the business and obviously you need more capital, what do you do with them? And starting with the finance background helps you to explore many areas that is relevant to start a business. So if you join a bank or you join a financial institution, you'll be dealing with a company like I was, and you'll be seeing all aspects of how to foster a business in the form of corporation. So I do agree.
Fantastic, and I'd echo that as well. One of the things that, whether or not you feel you want to stay in finance through your career, I said about how students and many of us today will go through different careers throughout our life, different jobs throughout our life. It gives you a fantastic grounding. The development, and particularly the large employers who've got fantastic graduate schemes and programs as well, will give you such a base that I think it's a hugely valuable industry still to go into. So Gia, thank you for your question. We've had another question about, I guess, your career again, David. Sort of what drove you to start your own business when you did in 2006? How do you tackle difficult periods in your career and within the company?
Right. That is actually a very good question. There were two reasons why I decided to start my own business. Back in 2005, there was my previous employer, China Development Bank, has a change of ownership. So it was a pretty big situation. There was a took over situation that the new management team came in. And although I was asked to stay to continue, what I was responsible for, but that became the trigger point for me to think of whether I would stay or not. But also at the same time, I really seeing China as a very important opportunity. Then I know if I were stayed in my previous employer, because back then it was restricted, so I couldn't represent the bank and to start traveling and to do business in China. So I thought maybe that's the time. And there was also an opportunity. There was someone who my former partner invited me to join to start creating a new fund management business. So there was a few things all happening at the same time, and I was in my early 30s, and I thought, all right, let's try that.
And what keeps you motivated now? I mean, the business has been running 15 years or so.
Yeah.
How do you remain motivated?
I think I'm I'm learning as I do more work, and I think for me, truthfully, is working with very successful entrepreneur through my help, and now they become much larger public companies, and I still work closely with them. That really gives me energy, and I know those relationships are for very long term. I can help you when you're young and small, but when you grow to become bigger, we can still work together for expansion, for acquisitions, or even for their future family succession. And if they want to divest, to look for a professional management group or to get acquired, we can still be in the business together. But those relationships are built over years with lots of trust. So I think that's also a perks of staying so long in the business, that you get to see, really great people.
Good people. There we go.
Yeah.
Fan has a very specific question, but thank you for joining us, Danny. You're a computer science PhD at King's, focusing on financial engineering and AI trading, some of the areas we talked a little bit about. Is it possible for a STEM student, so science, technology, engineering, maths, to go into investment companies like quantitative analysis? What do you need? What do I need to prepare for that? We've touched upon much of this, so I guess the answer immediately really is yes, of course. But is there anything in particular, David, you'd like to say or add to that for someone moving from AI, technology, engineering into the finance sector?
Well, I have to disclaimer. So I was more on the sociology and management side when I was at King's, right? So I wasn't a tech focus research. I think there's so many different areas in finance. So if you're strong in quantitative, if you're strong in computer modeling, there's so many areas you can work in finance business. I think hedge fund, for example, if you involve in the finance sector that is more focused on trading, your background will be very, very relevant. There are tons of hedge funds trades on trends. I think those are absolutely relevant. And I think more generally, if you can run good simulation with solid business sense, to create all kinds of different simulations of the companies you are about to get involved with, definitely, there will be people I'm looking for who have those experiences. I mean, even I'll look for the people with this kind of knowledge.
Fantastic.
Very relevant.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Zoltan is asking a question touching on sort of sustainability and green energy that I mentioned COP26, of course, at the minute. Green energy, climate change, environmental finance. How do you see our profession helping or contributing within that space? Profitability is, of course, a clear issue, but what supporting function can the finance industry play in making sure that globally we are being more sustainable, we are thinking about that impact?
Right. I think to tie up the direct financial benefit, which is in most cases, how successful companies are measured at this moment may not be that direct, but I think certain government, I think through COP26, many people are advocating that if you are investing on behalf of a much larger pool of capital, for example, endowments or government funding, that or a company over a certain size, you should also be socially responsible to provide the sustainability of your business and to help the environment. And more weight of allocation will be given to encourage to invest into those companies with much stronger sense in terms of ESGs or other sustainability measures and green energies, etc. So I think indirectly, maybe because of the allocations of available resource will go to people, will go to companies with stronger sense of this practice. So you get more resources. But in the older sense that you try to link profitability to all this extra measure you do. We need to see a much better technology could actually also doing a reduction of cost and at the same time help the environment. So that's a lot of the green technology we are aiming for. Electronic vehicles, for example, their costs, very soon will be much lower than the traditional, motor vehicles run by fossil fuels, right? And you're doing, better for both. And we'll just be seeing more and more of those in the market. And those are, best example of what are the key investment targets should look like.
Mm-hmm. And with all this new technology, what impact do you think the metaverse will have on work culture, I guess, as well?
Right.
How is that changing?
Well, I think people are talking about interacting more virtually, right? I think that's how we see metaverse really comes to play, right? Is connecting people in multiple space, or multiple actual space, or multiple virtual spaces, right? So I think providing much better experiences, providing more direct or more immersed experience is definitely an attraction, provided that the application underneath can be sustainable, right? So I think the experience is really built on top of a real need for connection.
Mm-hmm.
And what those real connections are, outside of doing short video of dancing like TikTok or Facebook or Snapchat, I think a more concrete need for people to connect, the form of how people connect, still has a long way to go before I think the metaverse can really come into place. That's my personal view. So in a way, am I bullish? I think there's still a lot of room to grow. In that sense, yes. But if you ask me what those, how does those interactions will take shape, I can't quite see it yet. But then again, there are new areas which are building on top of what people already have, which is which is social media. I think something will come out of it, but whether these companies will sustain for long period of time or create a huge impact like Facebook used to create, I think remain to be seen.
Okay. Work in progress, one to keep an eye on, as I'm sure we will over the next decades or so.
Yeah.
David, I think we've got time for probably one more question before I bring what's been a really fantastic hour to a close. And it's a question I was going to ask you, but actually it's been stolen brilliantly by one of our students, which is always good to know that they're picking up the questions that I'd like to ask. Unfortunately, they've marked themselves as anonymous, so I can't say who it is. But when you look back on your time at King's, what do you treasure most? What was the most important lesson that King's taught you that you can leave our students today with that imparting wisdom and knowledge?
Tough question, really. I think if I were to say something that is most treasurable for me, will probably be, I think as a student, you don't really have a lot of real world problem that you have to deal with. I think, people might have student loans, etc. But I think this is one place I can fully concentrate without thinking of, other matters in the world. I can fully engage in what I do. Honestly, this is the only time in my life that I can focus 100% on what I do, and to really pick on things I'm interested in. And the wealth of available resources are tremendous. So I would say, I wish I would spend less time going to, theaters, but I can spend more time just talking to, my fellow students and roommates and other classmates. It was, if I could go back in time, I would, I'll do less. I'll watch less movie. I'll go out to restaurant, maybe a little less. Spend more time on campus. That's a truthful answer. It's not something I'm trying to say to.
I love that. I love you being very open and very truthful. David, thank you so much. That brings the time we've got really today to a close. I'm really sorry we didn't get to all the questions. I can see a couple more coming in as well.
Yeah.
A huge thank you to David Lin, who's given his time today. I hope you've all found that discussion and some of the questions we got to really insightful and interesting. We're going to be running more connections events over the next few months, and next February, I know that King's Business School are going to be running a young alumni finance panel. So stay tuned for more details on that coming soon as well. If you've got questions about anything that was shared today, please don't hesitate to get in touch with our alumni office. You can email them via forever@kcl.ac.uk. And of course, please do make use of all the support from King's Careers and Employability as well, that's on offer virtually, and hopefully as we return in person as well over the next few months, all the big careers activities, all the connections we've got, and the support we offer all of our students, both in the business school and elsewhere. And of course, you can get in touch with Careers via our website or via careers@kcl.ac.uk as well. But once again, David, thank you for your time today. Thank you everyone for joining us and listening. I hope you have a brilliant rest of the week with your studies, and have a restful sort of winter break coming up. We're not quite that far close to it yet, but it's on the horizon. We can all see it coming. So thank you very much for your time today, and I will see you very, very soon.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, David.
Bye-bye.